Welcome to Wealth Made Simple with Shaz, where you'll learn how to master your money through business, property, and tax-saving strategies. Your host has collectively helped his clients make tens of millions of pounds in additional profits through these strategic approaches to business. Introducing Shaz Nawaz, an award-winning chartered accountant, property tax expert, entrepreneur, and property investor.
So this week on Wealth Made Simple, we're going to talk about something. On Wealth Made Simple, we talk about positive things quite a lot of the time. Occasionally we talk about things that are less than positive, and that's what I'm going to do this week. Something that some companies have to go through. Hopefully you never have to go through this, but making your company bankrupt or bankruptcy in general. And I've got a little surprise for you at the end. About this week's show in general and moving on to next week. But this week we're going to discuss bankruptcy, and I plan on trying to give you a better understanding of what it means, the context in the business landscape, and hopefully I won't cross any financial lines that I shouldn't cross. But like I said earlier, I'm not authorized or regulated, so take what I say with a pinch of salt. If you want more information, go see a professional. So bankruptcy is a legal status that you can apply for when you are unable to repay your debts within the UK. It's often seen as the last resort for insolvent entities that cannot meet their financial obligations. I am totally reading notes, by the way, because I can't remember all of this. So in the UK, bankruptcy also applies to individuals, partnerships, and limited companies. Tend to use the word insolvency rather than bankruptcy, but it amounts to the same thing. So what are the key steps involved in bankruptcy and partnerships or for individuals? When someone files for bankruptcy, they usually do so as a voluntary course of action rather than as a forced course of action. They submit a petition to the court, which then assesses their financial position, where they sit, how much debt they've got, etc. And if the court deems them insolvent, a trustee is appointed to oversee the bankruptcy process. The trustee's role is to manage the assets of the debtor and distribute them fairly among the creditors. Again, when a company goes into liquidation, this is, a similar process that happens. The insolvency process starts, but it can happen in two ways for a limited company, either through the creditors' voluntary liquidation, where the directors decide to wind up the company, or through compulsory liquidation, which occurs when a creditor or a member of the company initiates this process through a court order. And if you've ever heard of companies going bankrupt and companies going into insolvency, into liquidation, it's no fun for anyone involved at all. I can promise you that. And assessors go in, they value everything within the building, within the company that is sellable. And then the aim is to sell as much as they can to recoup a bit of the financial loss that the creditors have and pay the creditors back. Yes, that when companies do go bankrupt, they just use a different word so that people don't always think of it in the same light, because it's not such a harsh word. Yeah, absolutely right. So bankruptcy does have some significant consequences for those involved. It can impact you in a number of different ways. First and foremost, your assets are sold to repay the debt, so you can't hide behind, and part of this is to stop people hiding behind, Oh, I've spent all my money on this, that, and the other. Oh no, I guess I'll take that with me. What a shame. I've got something now that's really expensive that I paid through the company, but now the company's gone. I guess that's now my buy. This is why this process happened. It is the way it is. It stops things like that happening, so you can't just take stuff out of your company and then liquidate and hope that nobody notices. I promise you they will find on the balance sheet where everything is and sell it, so you won't get to keep it. Companies have a really nice way of using legalese or business talk to generally throw around jargon that people don't see on the day-to-day. And so they don't necessarily know what it means. They just assume it's either slightly bad or it's the big word. People know what bankruptcy is in general. So, someone says, "Oh, that company's gone bankrupt." Oh, that company's closed down. That company's filed for insolvency. What's that? Never mind. Oh, shame that. It's not quite as terrifying sounding word. Businesses do that all the time, even when they make mistakes, like the data leak that Adri just talking about. There have been massive data leaks, and where people's personal data gets stolen off of company directories, and they call it a breach or a leak, and people hear a leak and they think of sending a plumber out to fix the leak in the pipe. No one really thinks of it in terms of how much. They generally don't say how much data has been leaked or how many files have been, and that's all probably not scaremongering. So we don't want people losing faith or losing trust in these corporations, so they play some things down to be sound not as bad as they potentially are. I don't know the statistics or the details of any of those things, so I can't pass judgment or comment. The bigger company the bigger risk you are taking. Someone smart can always hack when you store data online without best safety. That within every industry and with everything that we do, there is a risk. Understanding there is risk, mitigating those risks the best you can. That's all people can do. There's a lot to unpack there in terms of data security. I am not a GDPR expert. I do know the basics of it, but again, I am also not an internet security expert. We'll try and get one on sometime, and see if we can talk to them about better internet security. I mean, the best internet security you can have is to take it offline. I think I was told that once. If it's not online, if it's not connected to the internet in any way, shape, or form, probably all right. It's a cabin in the woods, little wooden shed. Don't touch my PC. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Yes, always keep yourself protected, obviously, online. But companies will have your data, but they will also have people far smarter than I am keeping it safe, and they will do their due diligence and the best they can do to keep it. And given how many or few data breaches there are, I would say they're doing a pretty all right job. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, that's that little sidetrack about data security there. So what does bankruptcy mean to you as an individual if you ever have to go down that route? And like I say, I don't think it will be fun for anyone, but assets, things that you own will be sold to pay for the creditors. You may face restrictions on obtaining credit or starting new businesses. If you're filing for bankruptcy in certain industries, they may say that you can't can't open up another business within the same industry or within connected industries or any industry, in fact, in some cases, if you've been deemed that bad. But sometimes it's just within certain industries. So you may have something that you did do well at, then you didn't do so well at, and now you can't go back into that industry. As far as limited companies go, you'll be forced to cease trading. And the directors may also face consequences in terms of holding similar roles in other companies in the future. So when you get restricted in terms of being made bankrupt, it's called a BRO. It's a bankruptcy restriction order, or bankruptcy restrictions undertakings. The mechanisms are used to the extent of the restrictions are placed on the bankrupt individual and their actions prior to bankruptcy. And if they're found to have been dishonest or irresponsible, the aim is to prevent the abuse of the bankruptcy process, for them to alleviate their irresponsibility and protect the interest of creditors within the companies, so that people get paid fairly for the services they've given, which I think is absolutely right. If you give a service, you should get paid for that service. If if that's the agreement that you put forward, standard capitalist idea, I guess. I agree to give you X amount of time for money, and then you don't want to pay money. Well, I'm going to have a problem with that because I've already given you my time. I think fair day's pay, fair day's work. Now, bankruptcy is, and generally, again, generalizing, the last solution. It's not necessarily the best solution, but depending on the specific situation, individuals can explore, as an individual, you can explore other options like IVAs, individual voluntary arrangements, or debt relief orders. As an individual person, you can do that. For companies, options include company voluntary arrangements, which is like an IVA but for a company, or administration procedures to help restructure the company to recover from financial difficulties. A couple of weeks ago, Shaz and I were discussing how just because you work hard doesn't mean you're best paid. If some of the hardest working people in the world do some of the most physical jobs and most labor intensive jobs, they are not paid the best. The amount of work you put, working hard does not necessarily equate to getting paid well. This is a much deeper topic that I would love to get into with Shaz and yourself, Treja, is that certainly in this country, we have the minimum wage, and I'm not saying it's great at no point am I, but there are many jobs out there where you have agreed the contract, you have agreed the rate. If you didn't like the rate, you could potentially negotiate. You could, make that known to the people. And I understand, sometimes people feel like they don't have a choice. What's the alternative? Be out of work, and they don't like that idea. I'm in the UK. Treja, where are you from? Let me know where you're listening to us from. But yeah, certainly in the UK, we've got, like I say, minimum wage requirements, and yes, you can absolutely get a job that doesn't pay what you want it to pay, but that doesn't stop you from looking for other jobs that pay better, and this is why this is from Germany. Amazing, fantastic. I'm glad to hear things are stable over there. That's all good to hear. Everything getting back on track after the last couple of years of imbalance that we've had. But yeah, we're streaming from the UK here. Hi. I'm so glad that we've got listeners all the way over in Germany. That's phenomenal. But yeah, people, going back to the salary thing, people tend to get into a job with, which they feel is a poor salary for, their services, their skills, their time that they're offering, and stop looking. They've got a job, so I'm now comfortable. Yeah, it's not great, it's not paid great, but I've got one. So, and that's not necessarily the attitude to take, in my opinion. If you've got a job, what's stopping you from looking for a better paid job, from looking for your dream job is being done by somebody else because they applied for it and you didn't. That's a quote from somebody else. It's not my quote. I'm not going to take credit for somebody else's work or words. But yeah, they, even if you're not where you want to be, apply for other jobs. There's nothing stopping you from doing that to get to where you want to go. So ultimately, you are getting paid and receiving a wage that you have agreed. You need to take responsibility for that, in my opinion. But going back to bankruptcy, it's not always sometimes people try and use it as an escape clause, as I said. Bankruptcy is a very serious step, and I would say anyone that's looking into this, seek professional advice. I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I think I've said that a number of times now. And I would say it's probably important. It's definitely important and essential to explore all available options and understand the implications of each of those options before you make a decision about bankruptcy or IVAs or anything like that. Because remember, seeking help, not a sign of failure. It's a sign of a responsible approach to your financial situation. Basically, just having a job be a benefit, and then use money so you can exchange it. Use like food. Yep. We all. I say we all. Most people exchange their time for money, and then they exchange that money for commodities like food, water, etc. Absolutely. That is the world we live in. Unfortunately, we do not live in a nirvana where we can just go out, pick up what we want, and it all gets. But do we want that? What? And this is moving on a step. And again, I would love to have this discussion with Shaz involved one week, and maybe we will. A moneyless society, cashless and moneyless are two different things. But a moneyless society where people don't have to trade their time for money. What are people going to do? Are we all going to become more artistic? Are we all going to become more creative? Because will the robots do everything? Oh, now there's a thought. There's nothing left for us to work on because the robots build our buildings, the robots plant our crops, the robots harvest our crops, deliver our crops, drive our crops. The robots do everything. And then what do? Do we just get more creative? Do we build better robots? Do we go home and solve a puzzle? Or, more TV, more films, more scripts, more art, more dance, more music? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to this. Potentially, people will find more faith because their focus isn't being drawn from 101 different places. I don't know. That's a discussion for another day. I will take a note of that because we are definitely going to do something on that in the future. And hopefully you guys will enjoy it. But just as a recap to overview this poor topic, People feel better after eating. They invent something. It's the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Hopefully people will be able to eat, sleep, and do what brings them joy. And that will be a fantastic... I wish we could live in that world right now, but at some point I must be realistic and be in the world that we are in rather than the world I want to be in, sadly. But yeah, to square this circle, as Shaz might say, overall, that there are pros and cons to bankruptcy, but it's something that's very heavy, very big, and something you shouldn't take lightly. Something that could affect you greatly in the long term. I've got a list of pros and cons here, but I think we've gone over that. So I'll just cover them off. There are some pros. I know, shocking. There are some pros to this. Debt relief. Bankruptcy provides a fresh start by eliminating most of your unsecured debts, such as credit card debt, medical bill, personal loans, things like that, unless you've made personal guarantees. But that's a conversation subject for another time. Upon filing for bankruptcy, you get an automatic stay imposed, which prohibits creditors from pursuing collection actions, such as other lawsuits, wage garniships, or giving you harassing phone calls to try and get something you have. For businesses and individuals with assets and income, it may offer the proposition to reorganize and allow for a structured repayment plan over time. Yeah, absolutely. Being bankrupt is a whole new start. It's going to be hard. It's going to hurt. And it's not something you necessarily want to experience at all. No, you're absolutely right. And it's not something I ever want to experience. I've seen companies, and I've got friends who have been in companies when they've become insolvent or bankrupt. And one of my friends, they bought a property with their partner, and they completed on the deal in the morning. The afternoon, he got called into the office and was told that the company no longer exists. He is to go home. He no longer has a job. And that must have been really, really soul-crushing, because that's the other thing to remember is once you have started your company, as we discussed, and you've built it up, you've got employees now, bankruptcy affects them too. It's not just about the business owner. And it affects everyone down the chain. And, so the cons of going down that is public record. It will impact your credit score and your ability to operate within certain areas of business. You'll lose your assets. You'll get limited asset access to credit going forwards. There's eligibility consequences, and most importantly, the impact of you as a human being, because we are all human. We do all live in this world together, and it will affect you personally. And that's not something that you should take lightly going through.
Thanks for listening to Wealth Made Simple. You can follow and contact Shaz on the Facebook pages Entrust Property Tax and The Profits Wizard. You can also find Shaz on LinkedIn, YouTube and Instagram. Alternatively, email him at shaz@aa-accountants.co.uk. Build your wealth by mastering money.